Hello all. Thank you for making time on a Saturday to get up early and learn about lamb kofta and tzatziki sauce. I really appreciate it and joining us here at Escoffier. So I am in the Escoffier test kitchen on the weekend, and we're going to, like I said, we're going to make some kofta and talk about different versions of it while doing making a tzatziki sauce. So I want to talk a little bit about kofta. It originally comes from the Middle East, typically Arabic. And it was found in their cookbook many years ago. That was the first origination. And so there's many different types of way to do kofta. So in the email, you guys received the recipe that we kind of created on a lamb kofta, which is great during the springtime. It pairs really well with mint and peas that are coming into season here. What I do want to show you, we'll come over to the cutting board real quick. All right. So here we have the meatballs nice and laid out. One thing I want to talk about with the lamb kofta and the meatballs is that these meatballs don't have a binding agent. So anytime we made meatballs before or a meatloaf, we have a binding agent, which is usually going to be eggs and breadcrumbs, which kind of starts to create a paste that holds everything together. Since we don't have this, this is technically gluten-free, which is great. What we do need to do is we need to put it in the fridge and let it rest so that the cold kind of keeps it firm and holds it together. So based on the recipe, we put everything in a blender except for the meat. So it's really easy to make. We don't have to do any pretty knife cuts or make it really pretty in that way. We blend all of those ingredients, the cumin, coriander, parsley, mint, salt, pepper. You can add a little bit of lemon juice or olive oil if you would like. We blend it and then we just mix it with the meat and then roll it into the balls, same as you would with Play-Doh. And then we let it sit in the fridge. So these have been resting in the fridge overnight. So they're nice and firm, they're holding their shape. So what we're going to do is I'm going to put these on low and slow heat, and I'm going to start cooking them in a saute pan behind myself. We're going to start on the tzatziki. So in the recipe, it does talk about doing this on skewers. Kofta is traditionally placed on a skewer like a kebab. So you would take your skewer and then you would put the ball at the end and you would kind of squeeze it down into this oblong shape so that you can eat it like a kebab. So that is traditional. It's a street meat kind of thing in the Middle East, but very tasty and very seasonal. So I'm going to get it started in the pan, and then I'm going to work on some cuts with tzatziki. So you guys how to make a great tzatziki sauce that pairs well with not only gyros, but almost any Middle Eastern, European, and some African dishes. Since I'm handling raw meat, I'm going to use gloves because I don't want to touch raw meat and then come and touch vegetables that are going to go straight in my mouth without washing my hands. So get the heat going. I'm going to put a few of these in here. I did already oil the pan, so there is some oil in the pan. If I were to throw these down without the oil, they would end up sticking to the bottom of the pan. And these are beautifully formed, nice even balls, so I don't really want them sticking. Then I'm going to put a little bit more oil on, and then we're going to put a lid on top of the pan. I don't have a lid that fits the pan, so you can always use another pan that's the same size and flip it over. That's really going to help it cook. All right. While that's cooking, we're going to get our tzatziki sauce ready. So same recipe. So we're going to come back over to the cutting board here. And then for the same recipe, so I have my 1.5 cups of yogurt already in a big bowl. Same as when we're making a salad or making any other sauce. Want to make sure we get a bigger bowl than we think we need, because the more stuff we add, it's going to start to overflow. And now we're going to practice some of our cuts. So I said in the recipe, it was to use a medium cucumber. I could only find a large cucumber. So I'm only going to use half of it instead of the whole cucumber. Now, as we're cutting it, so this vegetable is already rinsed. One thing I want to do before I get started with anything is I want to take this steel and I want to hone my knife. If we do this every time, what's going to happen is it's going to keep the knife sharp. It's going to keep it from dulling faster. I'm going to hold it at the angle of the blade, which is about a 15-degree angle for this knife. And then because it's going to create tiny metal shavings, I'm going to take my sanitizer rag and then wipe it off so that I don't get any metal shavings in the food. From here, I'm going to take the cucumber and chop the end off. And then I want 1/4-inch cubes. So we have a round object and we want them into 1/4-inch squares. The way to do that is I'm going to start by creating some level planes that are about a 1/4-inch wide. This last one, beautiful. So now I have these nice even planes that are going to be about a 1/4-inch wide. From here, I'm going to cut another 1/4-inch strip. And then I'm going to come along and cut into 1/4-inch cubes. So it's all done. Okay, so I'm going to do that with all of these. And then I'm going to add it to the tzatziki sauce. After I do this, next thing I'm going to do is go into the onion. I'm going to show you guys how to cut an onion into a brunoise. You'll notice I'm using a grip called the claw grip. Okay, so I'm holding my hand like this to stabilize the vegetable, but it keeps the knife on the edge of my knuckle so that I'm moving up and down on the knuckle, and I'm not going to cut the edge of my finger off. This type of knife doesn't look like a chef's knife. You can see it doesn't come to a point. It's called a nakiri knife. It's Asian, it's by Shun. And so it's flat and it's typically for your vegetable production. That out. Because you can go all the way down in the vegetable and I don't have to do a rocking motion like I would with a knife or with a chef's knife. Okay. Now I have my cucumber cut into 1/4-inch cubes. And here's a trick when you're using your knife. We never want to take the sharp side of the knife and slide it into the pot. We always want to put the knife upside down. That's another way to keep it sharp. Okay, so I'm going to put the cucumber in the bowl, and then we're going to come back to the onion. Now, I don't know if you guys can hear, but I can hear the kofta behind me, and it sounds like it's starting to sizzle. So I'm going to give it a quick shake. What that's going to do is that's going to keep it from burning on one side, and even with the lid, it's going to steam itself. But I don't want it to burn on one side and only cook on one side. So I turn the heat down a little bit. So those are going to keep cooking. And then next, I'm going to cut the onion for the tzatziki sauce. Now this we want a brunoise, which is an 1/8-inch by 1/8-inch cut. Okay, so this one is going to be a really small cut, and I'm only using 1/4 of the onion. So cutting an onion, one thing I want to show you is that we're going to keep I keep the root part on, the top on, because it's going to hold together the whole base of the onion so it doesn't start to fall apart. So you can see the root part up here is going to hold it together. And now comes the tricky part. So this part, I recommend going really slow, using a really sharp knife and practicing with it. We want to make sure our hands level on top, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut some horizontal slices on it before I come and cut the vertical. Okay. And then the other trick with this, I'll show you once I get the majority of the onion done, is I'm not going to go all the way through so that the onion starts to fall apart. Okay. So what you can see here is I have multiple sections of the onion, but it's still holding together. The whole thing's not falling apart. It allows me to maintain control of the onion. And then from here, I'm going to get some nice 1/8-inch cuts. The reason we want this smaller than the cucumber is if you ever had a big bite of onion, it's not exactly ideal, and it's really acidic. So the smaller it is, the more it's going to enhance the dish, and less likely it is going to be really bitter. Okay. So now I have the horizontal slices, right, allowing me to get layers on the onion, and then I have nice thin slices that are vertical. I'm going to check on the kofta real quick. Beautiful. All right, and now is where I'm going to take it. I'm going to use my claw again. I'm going to get some nice I'm just going to come down and get some nice even cuts. You can see it falling apart into little beautiful squares. And then I want about 1/4 of the onion on this one. So I'm going to save this for later for a garnish. All right, now if we want to come back to the main screen, we're going to add the rest of our seasonings in there. Same thing, I'm flipping the knife over, so I'm not using the sharp edge. Beautiful. And then I'm going to turn the heat off on the Kofta because I can smell it, it's done. When you're cooking, you use every single one of your senses. You use your sight, your touch, everything that you have. Okay. Next, I'm going to mix together. I have the yogurt, the onion, and the cucumber. I'm going to mix together the 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. I prefer to add a little bit more lemon juice, so it's a little bit more runny and saucy, and I do like it acidic. And I'm going to add a tablespoon of salt. Beautiful. So I have a nice runny sauce here. Last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut up the mint. Okay. So we come back to the cutting board. The way that I have my mint laid out, so I have my biggest leaf at the bottom and then my smallest leaf in the center. And I'm going to roll this into what's called a chiffonade. So if I roll this together, it holds it all together for me. And I can come along and get nice thin slices out of it. Same thing, we don't want a really big bite of mint. We want a nice little bit of mint. Beautiful. So I have this chiffonade here, which creates these nice thin strands, and I'm going to go ahead and throw into the tzatziki sauce and mix it together. And that will be it for the tzatziki sauce. So I have all my flavorings in there. One of the most important things when making any type of food is that we really want to taste it. Before we go any further, I'm going to taste it, make sure it tastes good. Perfect. There's your simple tzatziki sauce, which pairs with so many other things, such as it's ground beef, anything Middle Eastern, African. It's typically what it's going to go. There's some Italian. Now I'm going to take a new spoon, not the one that I put in my mouth, and I'm going to spoon it into a ramekin for our Euro platter. All right. Now that our tzatziki sauce is done, I'm going to check on our lamb. We're going to see how that goes. All right. So for our lamb here, we have a little bit of golden brown coloring on it. You can see that some of it burnt to the bottom of the pan, and that's okay. We're trying to get a nice even sear here and make sure that it's cooked all the way through. So if the pan doesn't look pretty, that's okay, so long as the food does. And now to finish this platter, this Euro platter that we have with the garnishes of cucumber, onions, and tomatoes, I'm going to place the lamb kofta and or kind of meatballs at this time on here. But before I do that, I'm going to put a paper towel down, and I'm going to put the meatballs on the paper towel, mostly because on this pretty plate that we have, I don't want the oil running around. So I want to make sure that these meatballs look nice and pretty. The oil is not going to ruin the beautiful plate that we made with our tzatziki sauce, tomato, cucumbers, and onions. And just give it a second to let some of the fat drain out. All right, so now that I've let the fat rest, I'm gonna go ahead and put the meatballs on the plate. You can see that steam coming off of there. It smells really good. Nice coloring, and that coloring is gonna give us a little bit of texture, which is exactly what we're looking for. Beautiful. And so here we have our beautiful, this is going to be our Euro plate. And then I recommend pairing it. I have some pita bread here that is toasted and cut up into pieces. So we kind of have like an appetizer platter plate where people can kind of build their own Euro. Use the tzatziki dipping sauce. and then pair it with the cucumbers, tomatoes, onions. And then we have the pita bread with brushed with some olive oil and some flat parsley on there. So I want to make sure everybody gets a good view of that. So that's exactly what we're going for. This is how I recommend pairing it, or you can leave the pita bread whole, make your kofta into those long strips that we talked about. And then go ahead and put your diced tomatoes, cucumbers, onions, and tzatziki sauce right in there and eat it like a gyro, which is similar to a taco. So that's our lamb kofta and our tzatziki sauce. Thank you guys for joining me for that. I think it smells lovely. I wish you guys could smell it.